All right, so today I'm going to show you how to do the landscape art. So you're going to want to log into Pixlr, go to Pixlr E. We're going to go create new. We're going to call this landscape art. It's going to be 1,000 by 800. Well, that's not what I intended to do. Turn on the white background. So landscape art 1,000 by 800 and turn on the white background and hit create. All right, for a sample, you will be doing your own, but for a sample, I will demonstrate one for you. So you are going to find anything that is a landscape. So you can choose landscape photography and go to images. And really anything that you find here. Now, if you have something specific in mind, let's say that you want a cityscape, you could choose cityscape. Maybe you want a mountainscape, so you choose that, all right? So find one that suits you and go from there. I'm gonna pull this one right here. Make sure that it does not have a watermark. Even though it has this at the bottom, that's okay because we can crop it out. We're not actually going to print it or do anything like that. So we can use it, but we do not want a watermark that runs across our page. All right. Or across our picture, sorry. So we're going to zoom in, and I like to make my picture bigger than my canvas. That way I can manipulate it and move it and see which area of the landscape that I like best. All right, so I'm going to go with right here. Make sure that you are on your image layer. There's a couple different things that you're going to play around with. In the adjustment menu, you can play with the colors, okay? You can do something that's called posterize. So something like that. I kind of like that. I can then go in and play with my temperature and my tint. Maybe I want it to actually be a cooler photo, so I do something like that. You want it to be warmer, you're going to go that way. So I'm going to pull that up there. There's some other adjustment things that you can play around with in here. Make sure that you go in and at least play with every one of them to see what it does to your picture. Under filter, there is an effects library. This sort of acts like how Instagram would act, those filters that you can use. See if there's anything in there that maybe you would want to use, and you can apply it. You can also play around with it, so maybe you don't want as much of that. You can play around with that as well. Under filter, there is also the details. You can do some things in here. There are lots of things through here. This middle menu, there's really not much you're going to be able to do with it, okay? You can play around with the pixelization of it. So maybe you want to pixelate it a little bit or not. Maybe you want to give it scan lines. Okay, you can, sort of looks like they're looking through blinds. You can play around with that as well. The idea is that the picture does not look like the original photograph. It needs to look more like a piece of art. So play with your colors. The colors don't even have to match what the original picture was. So maybe instead I want to go with something like this. We could do something more like that. We could go under the adjustment menu to temperature and tint again, and we can change it completely. That sort of looks like an old world photograph. You can bring it in here. It brings in those purples. This pulls out your blue. So you could do something like that even. Doesn't have to be, you know, this was a green landscape, blue sky. It could be totally different from that. All right. Once you have that done, then you're going to need to find a quote. So for me, I'm going to search for an adventure quote. Now, I do want to point some things out to you here. Something like this is not what we're looking for. We want your text, your quote, to look like you've actually put some effort into it, whether it's playing around with the typography or the colors, fonts, whatever. It needs to be creative. This is a little okay. It's all right. Not really what I'm going for. This is getting better. It's playing with the different sizes as well as pulling colors from within the picture. All right, so that's what we're looking for, is something that is appealing to the eye as far as typography. The quote that I'm going to use is, "Fill your life with adventures, not things." So let me show you how to do that. I prefer, instead of clicking on the text tool, I prefer to come over to my layers panel and click the plus sign and then click text, and it throws the text on there automatically. So I'm going to type "fill your," oh my goodness, all these pop-ups, don't know what they are. Get my text tool. Here we go. "Fill your life with," and I'm going to actually get my arrow tool and make this box bigger. That way my text does not bleed onto the next line. All right, so "fill your life with," and I'm going to, you will notice whenever you move this, it snaps to that pink line in the middle. Okay, that is telling me that it is centered. I'm actually going to shrink that a little bit because it's wanting to grab to the edge. That pink line, though, that pops up, that tells you that it's centered. So once you have that, you're clicked on your text layer, you can get your text tool, and now you can change the font to something that you like. I'm going to do another text layer. You're going to have to work with a couple different layers here with your text in order to make typography work. So I'm going to get a text layer, click on the plus sign on my layers panel and click on text and type "adventure." Now for adventure, I don't really want that font. I would prefer to have something that's a little bit more like cursive, maybe thicker cursive. Something that looks a little adventurous. Oh, goodness. I'm thinking actually something like, yeah, not cursive enough for me. Don't just settle for a font just because it's there. Make sure that you really put some time and effort into this. Maybe something like this one. There we go. That's more like it. Now I do know that I'm going to want that to be bigger. I haven't quite decided on my colors yet. We'll get to that, but I think that looks good. So I'm going to get my arrow tool and I'm going to move it. All right, now I can add my last text layer that will read. All right, and this last bit of my quote is "not things. Fill your life with adventure, not things." I'm not even going to use the rest of the quote. I don't really feel that I need it. So you choose how you want to do yours. And I definitely don't want that font. I want the same font as up above. That gives me a little bit of typography. And it's also too big. I want it to be the same size as this one. So that was size 80. So this one needs to be size 80. Okay, now I'm going to get my arrow tool. And now I have to figure out where I want these to sit. Maybe I want this one to sit just on the top of the mountains and this one right underneath it. So maybe something like that. But I'm not done because obviously I just dropped white text on there. So for me, I'm going to choose the top line, get my text tool, click on the color swatch, and you can choose from this color over here. But if you come over here, notice how that little bubble changes as I mouse over colors. And I love that Pixlr does this. This is not something that Photoshop does. You can choose colors from your picture, but it doesn't do this little pop-up bubble. So you just assume at random that you're getting the right color. I love that Pixlr has this little pop-up bubble. So you're going to choose something that you think would look good up in that area. Remember, you've got a light sky up there, so something a little bit darker is ideal. I like that. And then my text, not things. I would like for it to possibly be the same color if it can be. So I'm actually, there we go. If you just mouse over it perfectly, yeah, see, it might not work. So you might have to choose something else, something a little bit lighter. And that's okay. That will work for us as well. So maybe something like that. Now, adventure, we need to change it also. And I kind of like that dark, dark green there. And also with your text, you can do the styles here. So you might want to do the punch out. Okay, I mean, that kind of looks cool. I'm sort of happy with it. Maybe instead you wanted to add a drop shadow or not any effects at all. It's really completely up to you. But you can see now that the picture actually looks like the text belongs with it, and it's not just been dropped on top of it. And that's what we're going for. That would be your landscape art. So find a picture, find a quote, tie the two together, and submit it into the landscape art Pixlr folder in Schoology.